Hello again, viewers. You join us at Red Cliff Campground. It's located in the scenic Galatian Canyon on the Bozeman River District of the Galatian National Forest in Montana. The campground is about 45 miles south of West Yellowstone. It also came with power and water, which was pretty useful for us. In the evening, we just had our typical comfort food, just a bit of spaghetti. Just next to the campground was the Galatian River, also Highway 191 just next to that. The river was nice and cool. It was nice to cool off the feet in, and there was plenty of wildlife along the edges with a nice path connecting all the campsites together. The next morning, we made our way into Yellowstone National Park through the west entrance. What you're seeing here is the deep blue geyser going off, and it was our first experience of seeing the volcanic activity in the area and the geysers in general. So it was a pretty neat experience. We decided to pull over at the Painted Fountain Pot parking lot just to get a better view as our first foray into the park. However, I don't really know that much about Yellowstone, so I'll let David take over for this portion of the Yellowstone video.
Yes, much obliged. Here we see the Celestian Pool, bubbling away. And yet further down the path, the Silex Spring, with its crystal clear blue, yet deadly waters. And yet not all the pools can be clear, as seen here by the Leather Pool and its bubbling mud. Some areas are devoid of water entirely, replaced with hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide gases. At times, these gases and waters heated from the magma below become too volatile. We are left then with a stunning display, the geyser. Some geysers really push the envelope, as seen here, Old Faithful, which regularly erupts every 90 minutes at a height of a staggering 184 feet. As with all things in nature, the spectacle is short-lived. After the main eruption, the geyser drops down and continues on for up to 5 minutes of time. Just a short walk across the highway is Black Sand Basin. Here we see the Cliff Pool, the superheated water generated by the 42-mile-long plume of magma under the ground. All throughout the Yellowstone caldera, one can find many bubbling pools. One can also find a calm pool, surrounded with gorgeous color. However, at other times, the pools are quite volatile, showing the superheated action occurring under the ground. The pools are surrounded by gorgeous colors created by microorganisms known as thermophiles. They exist here and deep below the ocean's surface, near volcanic vents. One could mistake Yellowstone as just a park of volcanic activity and geysers. However, this is far from actuality, as seen here with a beautiful morning shot of hundreds of bison occupying the plains of the Hayden Valley. As the mystique of the early morning mist pulls away, we are left with a more crisp shot of the bison. Though small in this image, bison can grow to over 2.5 meters tall and weigh in at a staggering 900 plus kilograms. But wait, there's more. Just when you thought you couldn't grasp any more nature from a single park, Yellowstone surprises yet again. The great Yellowstone River. Here we are at the Upper Falls, towering 109 feet. Just a short drive from the Upper Falls, one can find themselves at the Lower Falls, Yellowstone's piece de resistance. The Lower Falls are a staggering 308 feet. This puts the falls at twice the size of Niagara. The topography of this landscape is truly awe-inspiring. The green flora growing from the mist, from this truly awe-inspiring waterfall. The Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. Thanks to eruptions and faulting, the accelerated growth has now left a gorge 1,200 feet deep. Though beautiful, these sites can be difficult to reach for those with respiratory ailments. Those with asthma may find the change in altitude and hike rather difficult. You join us, viewers, at a rather troubling image. As seen here, a young man approaching the bison. Again, these creatures can range in heights of 2.5 meters and at over 900 kilograms. Becoming too close can result in serious injuries. In the past, Yellowstone has had deaths due to complacency around these creatures. When the bison are not being dangerously approached, they lead a rather solitary life, with rather few predators around in the park. The bison can also be seen taking an occasional dust bath to deter insects. Moving forward from the bison, we find ourselves at these sulfur pits, which emit sulfuric gases. In the bottom right, you may find a small fox, which found its fate here. Some of the formations here come with a rather comical soundtrack. Let's listen. The formation seen here is due to a vent traveling through a layer of clay. Here we see a dragon's mouth spring, appropriately named from the mystique of the steam exiting the cave. The cave and spring were named by a visitor back in 1912. Here we see Mud Volcano, which is actually located on the resurgent dome in Yellowstone, the closest area to the magma chamber. The mud created here is from the thermophiles, creating sulfuric acid, which thus dissolves the rock. Here we see Mud Cauldron. The mist we see is not only from heat, but hydrogen sulfide gases. I will now take my pardon as Thomas explains the general store.
Thank you very much, David.
Yes, of course. Much obliged, yes.
So this is the general store here. We stopped here after our first day in Yellowstone. Pretty well stocked. This is in Grant Village. Got a couple provisions. We found these chip bags to be hilarious with the altitude. And with that, I'm going to give it back to David, because he's going to talk to us about wolves.
Yes, about wolves, yes. A marvelous thing, as we see here. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, wolves were routinely eradicated in Yellowstone Park. In 1926, the last wolf pack in Yellowstone was killed. Although reports of single wolves did continue, in 1974, the grey wolf was listed as endangered, and recovery was mandated. In 1975, the long process began in Yellowstone. In 1994, more than 160,000 public comments were received against the re-establishment of wolves in the area. It was, at the time, the largest number of public comments on any federal proposal. Over the coming years, the wolves struggled. Congress and the public, fighting back and forth on re-establishment. Today, though, the wolves have regained ground in the park. They are now at a delisted status and are closely monitored to ensure the populations remain stable. The outlook for wolves in the area looks positive. However, wolf populations will continue to be affected by the availability of elk, deer, and bison, which themselves fluctuate in response to hunting quotas. No Yellowstone trip would truly be complete without a visit of the Grand Prismatic Pool. Here we see the Excelsior Pool, just below Grand Prismatic. On a cold morning, the steam rises rather high. The ground has deposits left from the pools, which create abstract landscapes not seen anywhere else. Grand Prismatic, one of the many natures of wonder. Its prism of colors generated from a mix of the pool and the thermophiles of the surrounding area. However, in order to gain the best view of Grand Prismatic and to accept all of its awe and splendor, one must go up. Taking the upper trail, one can have a top-down view of this spectacular pool. However, this is a bit of a challenge for those with lung ailments. Back at the Hayden Valley, we find this prairie falcon with a fresh spot of kill. However, his enjoyment was short-lived. That's thanks to this gentleman here, the red-shouldered hawk, which decided to badger him. Undoubtedly, one of the most cherished moments of a Yellowstone trip is a close encounter with one of Yellowstone's elk. Though sometimes elusive, seeing a bull elk such as this, with such a beautiful rack, is quite a special experience. Join me now as we watch this elk do its bugle to another. What you heard there is, of course, the elk's bugle. One may think it is due to the population in close proximity to the elk. However, in a few moments' time, it becomes apparent what this elk was actually calling for. Soon, the question is answered. Here we see the pride of the pack, the dominant bull elk, making his way down from the tree line. One can tell his dominance by the double jowls seen on his throat. Also, the rather impressive rack which he carries. What we are about to see here is truly a special moment in the natural world. Watch as this dominant elk comes in contact with a lesser dominant elk. If one listens closely, you can hear the female elk calling this dominant buck over to the tree line. As he walks by the less dominant elk, he is not fazed. There is a small moment in which both elk seem to greet each other, dominance further established as he walks by en route to his potential mate. And back to the Yellowstone geezer. One of the best views that one can obtain of these remarkable sights is by, of course, traveling up. Here we have quite a splendid view of Old Faithful erupting in the early morning hours from the upper trail. However, if the hike seems too arduous, one can spot a luxurious view from down below. Old Faithful has erupted on point for the last 22 years. Once again, we touch base with the bison, one of Yellowstone's many animals worth spotting. The Hayden Valley always accommodates this ask. The Yellowstone bison is the largest animal in Yellowstone Park, as seen here on this short clip as this massive bull bison walks by a tour bus. However, the massive size does not slow the bison down at all. With a range of up to 35 miles per hour, and also a gold medal in swimming. Here we see our friend from the last clip as he strides into the Yellowstone River. Soon enough, the river is far too deep, and the bull takes to swimming. In a short time, he makes work of this, arriving at the other side to continue his grazing. And with that, I will now end the nature portion of this video. To you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, David. So, here we are, continuing our Yellowstone trip. We spent our last day in Yellowstone just kind of moseying along the Yellowstone River. Then back to the campground, and onward we went to Grand Teton National Park, which is south. And there are the Grand Tetons. We decided to disperse camp outside the park, which proved to be a little bit of a challenge. It turns out it's a holiday weekend. So after going up and down the forest road 2 or 3 times, this is where we finally ended up. It's not a bad spot. There's all the power lines and stuff blocking the Tetons, but it'll do. If you like the content that we're providing and creating here, please consider subscribing. Also, hopefully you liked the joke of having David along on our adventure. It was fun to do and fun to make, and you never know, he might come back if enough people liked it. Until next time, y'all, safe travels. See you next week.